Before the last race, there were about 10 other dudes who let me know they'd be out there running in the Ironman class for the first time because of my videos. So that was pretty cool, but now that the race has been run, there seems to be a bit of a consensus that my videos didn't do justice to the true torture of endurance racing. So maybe this will help out with that. Let me walk you through exactly what my day was like at the last race, which was the Glen Helen 6-hour endurance race. Keeping in mind that this was probably the most drama-free endurance race I've run. I only sucked at this one because of an injury and just not being ready. So this actually starts the day before the race because there's always stress involved with just getting to the race. Unless you sit around doing nothing every day, you probably have stuff to do the day before the race, but it's hugely advantageous to arrive the evening before the race because that allows you to get a good pit spot and get set up. So it's always a mad dash to get to Glen Helen, and this time I was coming all the way from Utah. And that's just how racing tends to be. It's just mad stress beforehand, and then you're worn out and stressed out before the race even starts. But this time, that whole ordeal of getting to the race was actually cake compared to the struggle that happened in the morning of the race. For no reason that was apparent at that time, the XR600, which had typically been super easy to start, took a solid half hour of kicking to show any signs of life that morning. I just could not figure that crap out. I had no clue why it wouldn't start, and it just simply took forever trying to start that thing. Fortunately, I figured that out after the race, figured out why it's being a dick, and I'll fix that in another video. But again, that's just pre-race luck. I've just had like all sorts of problems right before races. It's usually the day before when I notice that there's like a straight up cracked through rim on the bike or something like that. There's always just been something. But it's not just me. There's always people in the pits scrambling to make a bike work after signups, and I'm for sure always doing last minute things as well, as we've seen before. And this time it just happened to be that the bike wasn't starting. I was actually cutting it really close after all of the drama of getting that thing started, and it was, I made it down to the wire to get to the start line. Didn't have time for breakfast other than having one peanut butter perfect bar. Fortunately, I did make it to the starting line on time because the Ironman class has become the most popular class, and this time there were 49 entrants, which is more than you can fit on one starting line. So not everyone can even fit on the first line to get a fair start. Like this chick who happened to get the worst seat in the house behind an XR600 which ain't gonna start for the dead engine start. But it's alright, she smoked just about everyone anyway. But yeah, I didn't get a fire on that first kick, which it happens on occasion, and it took me another second to get the second starting kick in because I played it safe and cleaned it out with a few decompressed kicks to make sure it would go when I really kicked it. So on the second real kick, it went just fine, and then I just had some Southern California traffic to pick through, which at this point is pretty much my MO. Falling back to last place and climbing back up is just what I do. It's absolutely not on purpose ever, it's just what happens when you suck. Picking through the pack on the first lap is the riskiest part of the race. That's just what I've come to learn. You will get blasted with roost. Visibility will be poor. Nobody knows the course, and people will make unexpected moves, so I stay very careful in these first couple laps. This time around on the XR600, I had some muscle memory kick in from my 24-hour experience on the DR200 and tried to just rip it wide open on the uphills, which on the 600 causes a whole lot of out of controlness. These hills are deceptively steep. They look easy on video, but if you're getting out of shape going up them, it's not that easy to recover from. Going down them is also pretty steep, and it almost seems like you can't even slow down. This was especially apparent for me on this race on the big 600. Later in the race, with numb, torn up hands and tons of braking bumps forming on those downhills, they become downright sketchy, and they are just a struggle on every single lap. Up on the ridge is smooth for the first lap, and it's a good opportunity to go fast then. But this time I played it really safe because I've had too many first lap incidents with blowing the course, since they always make it just a little different, and you never know when they're going to throw in a sneaky little turnoff. Later in the race, the ridge just sucks. it turns into a whole lot of constant, dug out, really harsh whoops. I'm not kidding when I tell you it sucks hard, and I actually love it when it gets like that because it becomes extremely tiring, and that's typically the only way I'm able to ever catch the faster people when the situation is so shitty that it starts to come down to physical conditioning. This trench here is always a bit of excitement. Sometimes you roll through to find a traffic jam. Sometimes you roll through and a branch swings out and knocks you off. True story. Sometimes you come through and you see someone kicking, and then you'll come through again the next lap and find them still kicking. This downhill water runoff is challenging because the rocks get kicked around a lot, so it's a bit different every time you hit it. It's also a spot where you'll find a lot of people picking their bike up after a fall because it's slippery and pretty steep, and if you're getting out of shape, you're not going to be able to slow down that easy, so it's easy to panic brake and just make yourself eat shit. This little crack in the ground consumed many bikes at one point or another, mine included. If you came through there too wide or someone forced you into that, it's not easy to stay upright. This right here is my own personal hideout, right in this little natural den of branches. In the middle of the race, I hit a rock wrong and lawn darted straight into that little place. This simple straight right here got so whooped out later that I would bottom out repeatedly going through it. It's jarring enough to bottom out once per lap, but when the course gets nice and roughed up, it turns into such a struggle that it's actually funny watching everyone slow down for the straights, which is the exact opposite of what you normally do through straights. This little S-bend thing got so rutted and dug out that people were having to slow down to a walking pace to get through it, and I saw some people get ejected because of how whooped out it got. This straight got so rutted that eventually people were just riding through right next to those bleachers just to avoid the struggle of going down that straight. This straight, which is totally smooth here, turned into what seemed like sawtooth braking bumps the whole way. It became a real leg burner to get through that. This uphill also got totally whooped out. My favorite part of the race was on this uphill when one time I was behind someone, hit a bump wrong, whiskey throttled, and rode an accidental wheelie right past the person, hanging off the back of the 600 and almost looping out. Then somehow recovering without flying off the ridge and being like, yeah, I meant to do that. This other ridge actually didn't get too bad, but on this right-hand turn down, I had an insanely close call. Later on in the race, I was moving a lot quicker through that and was jumping through the turn. And one time I came over it and there was someone going super slow on the other side and they almost got a butt full of XR600. This is the spot where I almost T-boned a dude. If you look at the course markers here, there's a bypass for this section. I didn't notice that. So at one point I was straight bombing through there when someone turned left right in front of me. That would have been really bad news if we connected. I'm no expert, but I'd say getting plowed by a wide open XR600 would not feel good. This right here actually rarely happened. It's not super easy to stall the XR600, so it pretty much only happens when it randomly flames out like it did right there. But it was very easy to restart anytime it did that. I typically just give it a few clean out cycles and then one good kick from TDC and it always just goes. So at least kickstarting didn't create big problems for me at this race, but you bet there are people who will have problems with kickstarting during that race. It is not easy to kickstart when your leg is cramped so hard that you can't even move it. I saw a lot of people slip and die on this. Gravel over the top of pavement is always good as a painful slip and slide. This little trench was good for a flat front tire. This rock right here, 17 PSI, was no match for the XR600 being run into that rock. Going down this straight right here 4 hours into the race was when I realized that one peanut butter perfect bar was not enough to sustain me for the entire race. The straight had become all whooped out and my legs and my arms were just not working and I just felt super weak all of the sudden and I was like, shoot, that is definitely diet related. These jumps were fun the whole time, but after about 3 hours in, the backside of them was dug out pretty hard. And every time I would land on the backside of it, the 600 would just want to kick me off the front of the bike, but they were still fun. And the pits right here were the only time for a breather. So this one was just 6 hours of that. And I actually feel like none of that explanation, none of those comments did the torture any justice still. That still sounded way easy, and I just had a good time recounting the memories. So dang, I guess there's just no way to find out but to come join in on the fun for yourself.